Millionaire finds cleaner's blind daughter, playing chess alone, and what he does changes everything. Richard Anderson could never have imagined that a chance encounter would forever change the lives of 3 people. The successful businessman was going through one of the toughest periods of his life, burdened by guilt that had haunted him for years. That's when he heard a whisper coming from the library of his mansion. As he approached the slightly open door, he saw something that left him completely stunned. A small girl with dark skin and hair tied back with a yellow elastic was moving chess pieces with astonishing precision. "Knight to Bishop's Square," she murmured softly, as if speaking to someone invisible. Richard watched in silence, trying to make sense of the scene. The child was playing against herself, switching sides on the board and whispering each move. But there was something even more unsettling. Her eyes remained closed the entire time. "Rook takes pawn," she continued, moving the black piece with absolute certainty. "Now the white pieces are in trouble." The businessman pushed the door slowly, making it creak. The girl stopped the game immediately, turning her face toward the sound. "Is someone there?" she asked in a sweet but alert voice. "Sorry to disturb you," Richard said, stepping into the library. "I'm the owner of the house. Are you Denise's daughter?" The girl nodded, holding herself upright and dignified despite the awkward situation. "I'm Zoe. My mom is cleaning the second floor. I don't touch anything. I just sit here quietly." Richard approached the chessboard, amazed by the position of the pieces. It was a complex game with strategies he could barely grasp. "Who taught you to play like this?" he asked, pulling up a chair. "My grandfather," Zoe replied, gently touching the black king. "He said chess is like life. Sometimes you have to sacrifice important pieces to win." "Your grandfather must be a very good player." The girl fell silent for a moment, her fingers tracing the edges of the pieces. "He passed away 3 years ago, but before he left, he taught me everything about the board. He said I had a special gift." Richard felt a tightness in his chest. There was something in the way Zoe spoke that moved him deeply. Just then, hurried footsteps echoed down the hall. "Zoe! Where are you, child?" called a woman's voice, clearly worried. Denise Williams appeared at the library door, breathless, her hands still damp with cleaning solution. When she saw her employer talking to her daughter, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Mr. Anderson, I'm so sorry. I told her to stay in the kitchen, but this stubborn girl—" she began quickly, reaching for Zoe's arm. "It's no trouble, Denise," Richard interrupted, raising his hand. "Actually, I'm impressed. Your daughter plays chess incredibly well." Denise froze mid-motion, looking confused between her employer and her daughter. "Chess? Zoe can't see a thing, sir. How could she play?" That's when Richard fully understood the situation. The girl was blind, yet she moved the pieces with a precision that defied logic. "How do you play without seeing?" he asked Zoe directly. The girl smiled for the first time, a shy but proud smile. "I see the board in my head. My grandfather taught me to remember every move, every position. When he moved a piece, he told me where it was. After a while, I could see everything without needing my eyes." Richard was speechless. Denise, still bewildered, pulled her daughter closer. "Come on, Zoe. The gentleman has important things to do." "Wait," Richard said, standing up. "Denise, your daughter has an extraordinary talent. What she's doing it's impossible for most people." "Impossible or not, sir, we know our place. Come on, Zoe." But Zoe remained seated, her fingers still touching the pieces on the board. "Mom, can I finish the game? It's just a few moves to checkmate." Richard looked at the board again, trying to see what the girl visualized in her mind. To him, the pieces seemed randomly placed, but there was a logic that escaped his understanding. "How many moves?" he asked, curious. "4, Zoe replied with absolute confidence. "Black wins in 4 moves." Denise sighed, realizing it would be hard to pull her daughter away when chess was involved. "Can you show me?" Richard insisted. Zoe moved the black knight to a position that seemed harmless. Then she simulated the white piece's response, moving them as well. 4 moves later, the white king was cornered with no escape. Richard fell into complete silence for several seconds. In his 52 years of life, He had never witnessed anything like it. "This is unbelievable," he murmured. "Zoe, you have a rare gift." Denise shook her head, uncomfortable with the situation. "Mr. Anderson, I appreciate your kindness, but chess doesn't pay the bills. My daughter needs to study practical things, things useful for her future." "What if I told you chess could be very useful?" Richard countered. "There are tournaments, scholarships, opportunities. With all due respect, sir, that's for people like you, rich people. Zoe is a janitor's daughter. She's blind, she's—" Denise didn't finish the sentence, but the weight of her unspoken words hung in the air. Richard felt a pang in his heart. There was something about this situation that stirred painful memories he'd tried to bury. "Mrs. Williams, may I make a proposal?" "What kind of proposal?" she asked, suspicious. "Let me pay for professional chess lessons for Zoe. There's a very good teacher in New York who could—" "No," Denise interrupted firmly. "I won't accept charity." "It's not charity, it's an investment. Your daughter has the potential to go far." "I said no." Denise's voice rose. "Zoe, we're leaving. Now." The girl stood slowly, her fingers sliding over the pieces one last time. "It was a pleasure talking to you," she said politely before being led out of the library. Richard was left alone, staring at the abandoned board. The pieces remained exactly where Zoe had left them, telling a story of strategy and intelligence he barely understood. That night, Richard barely slept. The image of the girl playing chess in the dark wouldn't leave his mind. There was something about Zoe's determination, the way she faced her condition so naturally, that unsettled him deeply. The next morning, he waited for Denise to arrive for work. When she appeared in the kitchen with Zoe, Richard was already there with 2 cups of coffee. "Good morning, Mrs. Williams, Zoe." "Good morning, Mr. Anderson," Denise replied, visibly tense. "Zoe, go to the living room and stay quiet." "Actually," Richard said, "I'd like her to stay. I want to show you both something." He pulled a thick book from the shelf and placed it on the table. "This is a book about famous chess matches. It has games from grandmasters all over the world." He opened it to a specific page and began reading aloud the description of a match between 2 world champions. When he finished, he looked at Zoe. "Can you recreate this game?" Zoe tilted her head, focused. "I need to hear it again. Slower." Richard reread the game move by move. Zoe remained still, her eyes closed, as if seeing something no one else could. "Done," she said after a few minutes. "I can recreate it." "Zoe, don't make things up," Denise warned. "I'm not making it up, Mom. I can see all the moves." Richard brought a clean chessboard and placed it in front of the girl. "You may begin." Zoe positioned the initial pieces quickly, her fingers finding each square with precision. Then she began to reproduce the match exactly as it had been described in the book. Denise watched everything with a mix of pride and concern. Richard checked each move in the book, incredulous at what he was witnessing. "Perfect," he murmured when Zoe finished. "Every move is exact. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing." "Zoe," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion. "You don't just have talent, you have an extraordinary gift, a memory and visualization ability I've never seen in anyone." "What do you want with all this?" Denise asked, suspicious. Richard fell silent for a moment, wrestling with painful memories that insisted on resurfacing. "Mrs. Denise, may I tell you a story?" Denise nodded reluctantly, while Zoe remained attentive. 15 years ago, I had a daughter, Emily. She was passionate about the piano, had an incredible natural talent. Richard's voice began to falter. She begged me for lessons, to enter competitions, but I was too busy building my business empire. I always said, "Later, Emily, after I close this deal, after I expand the company." Denise and Zoe listened in absolute silence. One day, Emily fell ill. It seemed minor at first, but quickly worsened. I was away on business when she was hospitalized. By the time I returned, Richard stopped, unable to continue. "You don't have to tell us," Zoe whispered. "I do," Richard said, wiping his eyes. Emily passed away without ever having the chance to share her talent with the world. I made a promise to myself that I would never again let genuine talent go unnoticed because of my neglect. Denise felt her eyes welling up. Zoe reached out toward Richard, finding and holding his hand. "I'm so sorry," the girl said sincerely. "Zoe, when I watch you play chess, I see the same passion Emily had for the piano. I see a talent that needs to be nurtured, developed. I don't want you to miss opportunities the way my daughter did." Denise discreetly wiped away tears. "Mr. Richard, I understand your pain, but Zoe is my responsibility. I can't accept favors." "I'm not offering favors," Richard insisted. "I'm offering fair opportunities. Zoe has the right to develop her talent. And what if she grows accustomed to things she can't have? What if she builds impossible expectations?" Richard looked straight into Denise's eyes. "And what if we don't try, and she never knows what she's capable of?" The question hung in the air, heavy as a hammer. Zoe remained silent, her fingers unconsciously tracing chess moves on the table. "May I propose something different?" Richard said. "What if Zoe came here in the afternoons while you're working and I taught her what I know about chess? No commitments, no pressure, just exploring her talent." Denise hesitated. On one hand, she knew her daughter was special. On the other, she feared this world of wealth and opportunity might be nothing but a cruel illusion. "Mom," Zoe said softly, "I'd like to learn more." Denise's heart broke a little. She knew her daughter better than anyone and understood how deeply Zoe loved chess. It was her one true passion. "All right," she finally conceded, "but only while I'm working here, and no expensive gifts or wild promises." Richard smiled for the first time in a long while. "Agreed." In the weeks that followed, a quiet routine settled into the mansion. Denise arrived in the morning for work, and Zoe would accompany her. While her mother cleaned the other rooms, Richard and Zoe would meet in the library for their chess sessions. Richard quickly realized that teaching Zoe was unlike any previous experience. The girl absorbed knowledge like a sponge, but more than that, she questioned, developed her own theories, and created variations that didn't always follow conventional rules. "Why move the knight first?" she asked during a classic opening. "Because it's the strategy recommended by masters," Richard replied. "But what if the opponent doesn't expect it? What if I surprise them by moving the bishop's pawn?" These conversations became more and more frequent. Zoe didn't just learn the rules, she questioned them, reinvented them, and adapted them to her own unique playing style. One day, Richard brought a computer with a chess program. "Today, you'll play against a different opponent," he announced. "Who is it?" Zoe asked, curious. "A computer program. It's considered very strong." Richard set the program to an intermediate level, thinking it would be a good challenge for her. Zoe listened to the starting position and began playing. 40 minutes later, the program was defeated. "This can't be right," Richard murmured, checking the screen. "This program beats players with years of experience." "Can I play again?" Zoe asked excitedly. "Now I know how it thinks." Richard set the program one level higher. Zoe won again, this time even faster. "Zoe," Richard said, his voice trembling with emotion, "do you realize what you just did? I beat the computer. You defeated a program loaded with thousands of games, strategies developed by grandmasters from all over the world." The girl smiled, but Richard could see she didn't fully grasp the magnitude of her achievement. "Zoe, I think it's time to show your talent to others." "What kind of others?" "There are chess clubs, tournaments, places where you can play against real opponents, people who take the game as seriously as you do." Zoe fell silent, processing the idea. "Will my mum let me?" "We'll talk to her." When Denise heard the proposal, her reaction was immediate and firm. "No, Zoe won't be putting herself on display for strangers." "Mrs. Williams, your daughter has a talent that deserves recognition," Richard argued. "Talent doesn't pay the rent. Zoe needs to prepare for real life, not fantasies." The discussion went on for an hour, with Zoe listening quietly. Finally, she spoke up. "Mom, can I say something?" Denise nodded, still upset. "Mr. Richard isn't trying to hurt me. He lost his daughter, remember? I think he just wants to help me not miss my chance." The girl's words hit Denise like a punch to the stomach. She looked at Richard and saw genuine pain in his eyes. "All right," she relented at last. "But just one tournament. If it doesn't work out, we drop this." "Promise," Richard said, relieved. The New York Chess Club was bustling that Saturday afternoon. Richard arrived with Denise and Zoe, all visibly nervous. The first hurdle was registration. The tournament official looked at Zoe skeptically. "She's underage and, well, are you sure she can compete?" "Yes," Richard replied firmly. "She knows all the rules." "It's not that. It's just, tournaments can be intimidating. Are you sure she's ready?" Denise stepped forward, defensive. "My daughter is more prepared than many adults I know." The man sensed the tension and decided not to press further. "All right, we'll register her in the junior division." Zoe's first opponent was a 13-year-old boy who had won several regional tournaments. When he saw he would be playing against a blind girl, he made a scornful face. "Is this a joke?" he muttered to his friends. Zoe heard the comment but kept her composure. Richard approached her. "Remember what we talked about? Play your own game. Don't worry about what others think." The match began. The boy played aggressively, trying to finish quickly. Zoe responded calmly, each move calculated with precision. 20 minutes later, the boy was completely lost on the board. His friends, who had started by laughing, now watched in absolute silence. "Checkmate," Zoe announced softly. The boy stared at the board, disbelieving. His look of superiority had turned to pure shock. "How did you can't even see the board." "I don't need to," Zoe replied, rising from her chair. "Thanks for the game." Richard and Denise watched from a distance, proud and awed at the same time. Zoe's victory caught everyone's attention at the club. Her second opponent was an adult man, a chess teacher at a private school. He approached the table with respect, having heard about the girl's first win. "It's a pleasure to play against you," he said politely. "Likewise," Zoe replied. This match was longer and more complex. The teacher tried various strategies, testing different aspects of Zoe's game. She responded to each challenge with creativity and precision. When the game ended, once again with Zoe's victory, the teacher stared at the board for several minutes, trying to understand where he had gone wrong. "Young lady," he finally said, "you play like someone with decades of experience. Where did you learn these strategies?" "My grandfather taught me the basics. The rest, I make up as I go." The teacher shook his head, impressed. "You improvise during the game?" "Sometimes the book moves don't work, so I create something new." Richard overheard the conversation and felt a shiver down his spine. Zoe wasn't just playing chess, she was reinventing the game to suit her needs. The final match of the youth tournament would be against a 15-year-old girl, the state champion in her category. When she saw Zoe approaching the table, she looked surprised. "You're the girl everyone's talking about." "I guess so," Zoe replied, a little embarrassed by the attention. "I heard you can't see. How do you play?" "I see the game in my head. It's like a movie only I can watch." The state champion was intrigued by the answer. "That must be an amazing skill." "Sometimes it is. Other times, I wish I could just see the faces of the people being kind to me." The simplicity and honesty of the response touched her opponent. From that moment on, the final became more than a competition. It turned into a meeting between two young girls who genuinely loved chess. The match lasted nearly 2 hours. Every move was calculated with extreme care. The audience gathered around the table watched in reverent silence. Denise held Richard's hand, both tense from the intensity of the game. Richard sensed this match was different. Zoe was being pushed to the limits of her abilities. In the end, after a sequence of moves that left every spectator stunned, Zoe secured an epic victory. The state champion extended her hand. "That was the best game of my life," she said sincerely. "You're extraordinary." When the result was announced, the entire club applauded. Richard had tears in his eyes, and Denise covered her face with her hands, overcome with emotion. Zoe was called to receive the trophy, but when she reached the small stage, she asked for the microphone. "I want to thank my mother, who worked so hard to give me opportunities, and Mr. Richard, who believed in me when even I didn't believe in myself. But most of all, I want to dedicate this victory to my grandfather, who taught me that chess is like life. Sometimes we have to sacrifice important pieces to win. The silence in the club was absolute. Many of those present were visibly moved. On the way home, the car was quiet. Finally, Denise broke the stillness. "Richard, thank you." It was the first time she had called him by his first name. Why? For seeing in my daughter what I couldn't see, for making me accept that maybe she's capable of things I never dreamed of. Richard smiled, glancing in the rearview mirror at Zoe, who was asleep in the back seat, hugging her trophy. "Denise, this is just the beginning." The following Monday, Richard received a call that would change everything again. It was William Parker, president of the United States Chess Federation. "Mr. Anderson, I've heard about a girl you've been training, Zoe Williams." "Yes, Zoe is extraordinary. We're organizing a national youth tournament next month. Would you like to enter her?" Richard felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. It's a national tournament. That means players from all over the country, exactly the best young talents in the United States. If Zoe stands out, it could open doors to international championships, scholarships abroad. Richard thanked him and hung up, his mind buzzing with possibilities and worries. A national tournament would be a huge leap for Zoe. When he shared the proposal with Denise and Zoe, their reactions were opposite. "A national tournament?" Denise turned pale. "Richard, this is going too far." "I want to compete," Zoe said immediately. "Zoe, you don't even know what this means. It would be in Washington, D.C. with professional players, media pressure." "Mom, I know I can compete. I feel it right here," the girl said, placing her hand on her chest. The argument went on for days. Denise was afraid her daughter would be crushed at such a high level of competition. Richard believed Zoe was ready for the challenge. Finally, Zoe made the decision herself. "Mom, with or without your permission, I'm going to try. I'd rather fail trying than spend my whole life wondering if I could have done it." The determination in the girl's voice convinced Denise. Reluctantly, she agreed. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The preparations for the national tournament took up the entire next month. Richard hired a retired grandmaster to give Zoe intensive lessons. Denise watched some of the sessions, amazed at how her daughter absorbed complex knowledge. "She has an intuitive understanding of the game I've never seen in 40 years of playing," the instructor told Richard. "It's like chess is her native language." 3 days before the trip to Washington, D.C., Zoe began showing signs of nervousness. She, who always slept well, started having insomnia. During training, she made uncharacteristic mistakes. "Zoe, what's going on?" Richard asked after a particularly frustrating session. "What if I'm not good enough? What if I let everyone down?" Richard sat beside her. "Zoe, you've already proven you're extraordinary. The tournament results won't change that. But what if people realize I'm just a blind girl who got lucky?" The vulnerability in Zoe's voice broke Richard's heart. He understood the pressure was becoming too much for a child. "Zoe, can I tell you a secret?" She nodded. "When Emily died, I stopped believing in myself. I thought I had failed as a father, as a person. It was only when I met you that I started believing again that people can be extraordinary." "Really? Really? You taught me that talent has nothing to do with what we can see with our eyes. It's about what we feel here inside," he said, touching his chest. Zoe smiled for the first time in days. "Thank you, Richard." "For what?" "For helping me remember who I am." The Washington Convention Center was packed when they arrived for the national tournament. Players from all states, accompanied by coaches and family, created an atmosphere of intense competition. Zoe held onto Richard's arm as they walked through the venue, listening to the chatter around them. "That's the blind girl from New York," someone whispered. "They say she's a phenomenon," another remarked. "Must be marketing. It's impossible to play high-level chess without sight." Denise got angry at the comments, but Zoe remained calm. Let them talk, Mom. On the board, everyone's equal. The first round paired Zoe against a 16-year-old boy from Texas, considered one of the country's biggest rising stars. When he saw his opponent, he couldn't hide his disdain. "Is this serious? I'm playing against a blind girl." "Is there a problem?" Zoe asked politely. "It's just unexpected." The match began, and the boy quickly realized he had completely underestimated his opponent. Zoe played with a serenity that contrasted with his growing nervousness. 40 minutes later, he was defeated. At the end of the game, he extended his hand to Zoe with genuine respect. "I'm sorry for my earlier attitude. You play better than most adults I know." "Thank you. It was a good game." The victory in the first round caused a stir at the tournament. Journalists became interested in Zoe's story, and photographers tried to capture images of the girl playing. Richard tried to shield her from excessive attention, but Zoe seemed to handle the pressure well. "Don't worry," she said, when Richard asked if she was bothered. "I focus on the game. The rest doesn't matter." The second round was against a 14-year-old girl from Pennsylvania, also considered a prodigy. This time, her opponent treated Zoe with respect from the start. "I heard about your wins yesterday. I'm excited to play against you." "Likewise," Zoe replied. This match was more balanced and lasted nearly 2 hours. Both girls displayed sophisticated techniques and impressive creativity. In the end, Zoe won by a very slim margin, but the victory was earned with undeniable merit. "You're amazing," her opponent said after the game. "How do you visualize such complex positions?" "It's like music," Zoe explained. "You don't need to see the notes to hear the melody." The analogy impressed not just her opponent, but also the journalists covering the tournament. The phrase ended up being highlighted in the next day's reports. In the third round, Zoe faced her biggest challenge yet, Michael Johnson, a 17-year-old who had already represented the United States in international youth competitions. Unlike her previous opponents, Michael showed neither disdain nor surprise. He treated Zoe like any serious opponent. "I've heard about your talent," he said simply. "It'll be an honor to play against you." The match was epic. Michael used complex strategies that tested every aspect of Zoe's game. She responded with creativity and technique that impressed even the grandmasters watching. 3 hours later, the game ended in a draw. "I've never played such a tough match," Michael admitted. "You pushed me to give my best." "You too," Zoe replied. "I learned a lot playing against you." The draw against the tournament favorite solidified Zoe's reputation as a real force in the competition. Journalists now followed her constantly, and other competitors began studying her past games. "Zoe's become a celebrity," Denise commented, worried. "She's handling it well," Richard observed. "Better than many adults would." In the following rounds, Zoe maintained a streak of wins and draws that kept her at the top of the tournament. Her fame grew to the point where her matches drew crowds of spectators. National media began covering her story. Reports about the blind girl revolutionizing chess in the United States appeared in newspapers and TV programs. "Richard," Denise said one night, "I'm scared." "Scared of what?" "That all this will change Zoe, that she'll lose herself in this world of fame and expectations." Richard understood the concern. He himself had noticed the pressure affecting her, even though she tried to hide it. "I talked to her today," Richard said. "I asked if she wanted to stop, to go home." "And what did she say?" "That she wants to finish what she started. But she also said she misses our library, the games just for fun." Denise sighed. "I think we all miss those simpler times." The penultimate round of the tournament would be the most decisive. Zoe was tied for first place with 2 other competitors. A win would put her in contention for the national title. Her opponent would be Tyler Cooper, an 18-year-old known for his aggressive play and questionable psychological tactics. "I heard you play in the dark," Tyler said as they sat at the table. "Must be easy for someone like you not to get distracted." Zoe caught the sarcasm, but kept her composure. "Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses," she replied diplomatically. "Sure. Must be an advantage too, having all this media attention. Bet it intimidates your opponents." Richard, watching from a distance, tensed. He recognized Tyler's tactics, trying to unsettle his opponent emotionally before the game even began. "Shall we play?" Zoe said, ignoring the comments. The match began, and it quickly became clear that Tyler was pushing for a fast, aggressive game. He made risky moves, trying to create high-pressure situations. Zoe responded with patience and precision, neutralizing each attack with creative defenses. As the game progressed, Tyler's frustration grew more evident. "How do you defend these positions?" he muttered during a particularly tough move. "Practice," Zoe answered simply. Mid-game, Tyler made a critical mistake from over-aggression. Zoe seized the opportunity with a sequence of moves that left him in an untenable position. Realizing defeat was inevitable, Tyler began muttering about Zoe's unfair advantage. Other players at nearby tables started glancing over disapprovingly. "Is there a problem?" Zoe asked, still focused on the game. "It's just different, playing against someone who doesn't follow the usual rules." "What usual rules?" Tyler realized he'd gone too far and fell silent. 10 minutes later, he resigned. The victory secured Zoe's place in the national championship final. She would be the first blind girl to compete for a title of this magnitude in the United States. That night, their hotel became a small hub of attention. Journalists sought interviews, other competitors came to congratulate Zoe, and tournament organizers discussed final arrangements. Richard managed a quiet moment alone with Zoe in her room. "How are you feeling?" "Tired," she admitted. "I didn't know chess could be so complicated." "Complicated how?" "It's not just about the game. It's about what people think, what they expect, what they want me to represent." Richard sat beside her on the bed. "Zoe, you don't have to represent anything but yourself." "But what if I lose tomorrow? They'll say it was luck that got me this far, that a blind girl had no business being in a tournament like this. And if you win?" Zoe fell silent for a moment. "If I win, everything will change, won't it?" "Probably, yes. The question is, do you want it to?" "I just want to play chess," she said, her voice small and vulnerable. "Like we used to in the library. No pressure, no expectations. Just for the love of the game." Richard felt his heart break. He realized that in trying to give Zoe opportunities, he might have taken away the simplicity and purity that made her talent so special. "Zoe, what if after tomorrow we went back to those games in the library, no matter the outcome of the final?" "Promise?" "I promise." The final of the National Youth Chess Tournament drew an unprecedented audience. The Washington Convention Center was packed, with live television coverage and reporters from multiple outlets. Zoe would face Brandon Wilson, a 17-year-old from Los Angeles, considered the greatest talent of the new generation in American chess. Unlike some of her previous opponents, Brandon treated Zoe with absolute respect from the start. "It's an honor to be in the final with you," he said when they met before the match. "No matter the result, you've already made history." "Thank you. You're an extraordinary player, too." The final match had a longer time limit, allowing for more thoughtful moves. Both competitors had up to 4 hours to complete their turns. When the match began, the silence in the auditorium was almost reverent. Hundreds of people watched every move, trying to anticipate the strategies of the two young prodigies. Brandon played with impeccable classical technique, following strategies tested by generations of grandmasters. Zoe responded with unique creativity, inventing solutions that surprised even the seasoned commentators. 2 hours in, the match was perfectly balanced. Neither had gained a significant advantage, and the tension in the room was palpable. "This is one of the most technical finals I've ever seen," a grandmaster commented on the broadcast. "Both players are demonstrating a level that would be impressive even in adult competitions." By the third hour, Zoe secured a subtle but meaningful advantage. Brandon noticed and redoubled his efforts to balance the position. From then on, every move became crucial. Both players took dramatically longer to think, with some moves taking over 15 minutes to decide. Denise watched from a distance, her hands clasped with Richard's. Both were tense but proud of how maturely Zoe handled the pressure. In the final stretch, with little time left on the clock, Brandon made a tiny, nearly imperceptible mistake. Zoe spotted it immediately and capitalized. 10 minutes later, Brandon extended his hand in surrender. "Congratulations," he said with genuine sincerity. "You deserve this title." The auditorium erupted in applause. Zoe remained seated for a few seconds, processing what had just happened. She had become the national youth chess champion. When she finally stood, Denise and Richard wrapped her in their arms. Tears streamed down all three faces. "You did it," Denise whispered in her daughter's ear. "We did it," Zoe corrected. The awards ceremony was emotional. When Zoe received the national champion trophy, she asked for the microphone to say a few words. "I want to thank everyone who made this possible. My mother, who always supported me even when she didn't understand my dreams. Richard, who believed in me when I didn't even believe in myself. And my grandfather, who taught me that chess is about so much more than winning or losing." The audience was moved by the maturity and gratitude of the new champion. "But most of all," Zoe continued, "I want to tell every child who feels different, who has dreams that seem impossible, don't give up. Sometimes our differences are exactly what make us special." The applause was deafening. Journalists, competitors, organizers, everyone was visibly emotional. In the weeks following the tournament, Zoe's life changed drastically. Sponsorship offers came daily, invitations for TV shows piled up, and multiple chess academies wanted to hire her. "It's too much," Denise confessed to Richard. "I don't know how to handle all this." Richard was also overwhelmed. As Zoe's unofficial guardian, he received dozens of calls daily from people interested in exploiting the girl's potential. "I think we need professional help," he suggested. "Someone who understands chess careers, contracts, that kind of thing." But Zoe surprised everyone with a different proposal. "What if we turned it all down?" "What do you mean?" Richard asked. "What if we just went back to our normal routine? I keep playing, but without all this commercial pressure?" Denise and Richard exchanged confused glances. "Zoe, you just won the national tournament. This opens doors to international competitions, scholarships." "I know. But remember what we talked about going back to playing at the library?" "I meant it." Richard realized Zoe was struggling with the same dilemma that had haunted his relationship with Emily, the balance between opportunity and genuine happiness. "Zoe, are you sure? These opportunities might not come again." "I'm sure. I want to keep playing chess because I love it, not because people expect me to." Zoe's decision to reject most commercial offers caused controversy in the media. Some commentators criticized what they called a wasted opportunity, but Richard fully supported her choice. "Zoe has the right to choose her own path," he stated in an interview. "Her talent won't disappear just because she chose to prioritize her happiness." Denise, initially worried about the financial implications, eventually agreed when she saw how much more relaxed and happy Zoe was. "My daughter has always been wise beyond her years," she said. "If she thinks this is the right path, I trust her." 3 months after the national tournament, life at Richard's mansion had returned to normal. Denise continued working as a cleaner by choice, and Zoe went back to her chess sessions at the library. "Don't you miss the fame?" Richard asked during one of their casual games. "Sometimes," Zoe admitted, "but I prefer it here. I can play for fun without thinking about rankings or expectations." "What about tournaments? Don't you want to compete anymore?" "I do, but only when I feel like it, not because someone's pressuring me." Richard smiled, admiring the girl's maturity. "You know, Zoe, you've taught me something important." "What?" "That success isn't about meeting others' expectations. It's about staying true to what really matters to you." Zoe smiled, moving her knight into a position that threatened Richard's king. "My grandfather used to say something similar." "What did he say?" "That the most important victory is being able to look in the mirror and like the person you see." Richard fell silent for a moment, reflecting on the words. "Your grandfather was very wise." "He was. And you know what else he used to say?" "What?" "That the best chess games are the ones we play with people we love." Richard felt his eyes well up. After years of guilt and remorse over losing Emily, He had finally found a second chance to make a difference in someone special's life. "Checkmate," Zoe announced softly. Richard looked at the board and laughed. "How do you always manage to surprise me?" "It's easy when you're more focused on being happy than on winning. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out." Now, continuing. 6 months after the national tournament, Richard received an unexpected call. It was from an internationally renowned ophthalmologist, Dr. Robert Mitchell. "Mr. Anderson, I heard through the media about the young Zoe Williams. I'd like to discuss a medical possibility." "What kind of possibility?" "There's an experimental surgery that could partially restore vision in some cases of congenital blindness. I'd like to examine Zoe to see if she'd be a candidate." Richard fell silent, absorbing the information. "Doctor, is this really possible?" "In some specific cases, yes. The surgery is still in the testing phase, but the results have been promising." "What would the cost be?" "It's an experimental program. There would be no cost to the family." Richard thanked him and promised to talk to Denise and Zoe about the possibility. When he shared the news, the reactions were mixed. Denise was excited about the chance for her daughter to see. Surprisingly, Zoe was cautious. "What if the surgery changes who I am?" she asked. "What do you mean?" Denise wanted to know. "I've built my whole life without seeing. The way I play chess, connect with people, understand the world, all of it comes from not relying on sight." Richard understood the girl's concern. "Zoe, are you afraid that regaining your sight might affect your chess talent?" "It's not just that, it's, I don't know who I'd be if I could see. What if I don't like that new person?" Denise sat beside her daughter. "Sweetheart, you'll always be you. Sight won't change your heart, your intelligence, your personality. But it will change how I see the world. Literally." The family spent weeks discussing the possibility. Richard researched the doctor and the procedure, discovering that Dr. Robert was indeed a world authority in experimental vision restoration surgeries. Finally, Zoe decided to at least consult with the doctor. "It doesn't mean I'll have the surgery. I just want to understand the possibilities better." The consultation with Dr. Robert took place at his office in New York. He examined Zoe carefully, running tests she'd never had before. "Zoe," the doctor said after the exams, "your condition is exactly the type that could respond well to the experimental procedure." "What are the risks?" Denise asked. "As with any surgery, there's a risk of complications. But in this specific case, the worst scenario would be no improvement in vision. There's no risk of it getting worse." "And the best case scenario?" Richard wanted to know. "Zoe could regain up to 70% of normal vision. It wouldn't be perfect, but it would allow her to distinguish colors, shapes, faces." Zoe stayed quiet for most of the appointment, processing the information. "Doctor," she finally said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do you want to perform this surgery on me?" "For free, I mean." Dr. Robert smiled. "Frankly, because your story inspired me. When I saw a young woman who managed to become a national chess champion by overcoming seemingly insurmountable obstacles, I thought it would be an honor to help her overcome one more. And if I decide not to have the surgery, that would be a completely respectable decision. Your vision doesn't define who you are, Zoe. You've already proven that." On the way back home, the car was silent. Each of the three was lost in their own thoughts. "What do you think?" Zoe finally asked. "It's your decision," said Richard. "Whatever choice you make, we'll support you." "Mom," Denise took a deep breath, "I'll admit I'd love to see you regain your sight. But more than that, I want you to be happy. If you think the surgery could bring you happiness, do it. If you think it might bring problems, don't." Zoe nodded, still reflecting. "Can I have some time to decide?" "Take all the time you need," Richard assured her. Over the next few days, Zoe behaved differently. She seemed to be paying more attention to the sounds, textures, and smells around her, as if trying to memorize a world she had only known through 4 senses. "Zoe," Richard asked during a chess session, "what's going through your mind?" I'm trying to imagine what it would be like to see all of this. The pieces, the board, your face when you're thinking about a move. And how do you feel about that possibility? Excited and terrified at the same time, Richard laughed. That's normal. Big changes always bring those conflicting feelings. Richard, can I confess something? Of course. Sometimes I'm curious about what colors are like. Everyone talks about blue, red, green, but I have no idea what that means. And how do you imagine them? Blue must be like the sound of rain, soft and comforting. Red must be like loud music, intense. Green. I think green must be like the silence of the library. Richard was moved by the poetry of Zoe's descriptions. You know what else? She continued. I'm curious about what people's faces look like, especially yours and my mom's. How do you picture us? I imagine you have wrinkles around your eyes from smiling so much, and that my mom has rough hands but kind eyes. You're not far off. Zoe smiled. I think I'll go through with the surgery. Are you sure? I am. Not because I don't like who I am now, but because I want to experience the world in a new way too. Zoe's decision brought a mix of excitement and nervousness to the whole family. Dr. Robert scheduled the surgery for 3 weeks later, giving time for all the necessary preparations. Richard insisted on covering all the expenses, even though the procedure was experimental and free. He wanted to ensure Zoe had the best possible support throughout the process. Richard, Denise said, I don't know how I'll ever repay you for everything you've done for us. Denise, you've already repaid me more than you realize. Zoe gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever. What? The ability to believe I can make a difference in someone's life. In the week before the surgery, Zoe decided to make a mental list of all the things she wanted to see for the first time. Richard and Denise helped, describing visual details she had never experienced. I want to see a sunset, she said. Everyone says it's beautiful, but I've never understood why. I want to see my mom smiling. I want to see the chess pieces. I know how they feel by touch, but it must be different to see them. And I want to see my reflection in the mirror. It must be strange to see your own face for the first time. The list grew each day, filled with simple discoveries most people take for granted. The night before the surgery, Richard found Zoe in the library, as usual, playing chess by herself. Nervous? A little. You? More than a little, Richard admitted, but also excited for you. Richard, no matter what happens tomorrow, I want you to know something. What? You saved my life. Not literally, but you gave me the chance to discover who I really am. He gave me a family when I only had my mother. He gave me dreams when I didn't even know I could dream. Richard felt the tears stream down his face. Zoe, you're the one who saved my life. You gave me a purpose when I thought I had nothing left to live for. So we're even? We're even. Zoe smiled and made her final move on the board. Checkmate. And this time, I don't even need to see to know you're crying. Richard laughed through his tears. How do you always know? Because when people we love are emotional, we can feel it in the air around them. Zoe's surgery was scheduled for a Tuesday morning. Dr. Robert had explained that the procedure would take about 4 hours and that the results would only be visible after a few weeks of recovery. Richard and Denise arrived at the hospital before dawn, staying with Zoe during the pre-surgery preparations. How are you feeling? Asked the nurse in charge. Nervous, Zoe answered honestly, but also curious to see what happens. Dr. Robert approached for final explanations. Zoe, remember everything we discussed? The surgery may restore some of your vision, but it might also have no effect at all. I understand, doctor, and that's okay. Whatever happens will be a new experience. The maturity of her response impressed the entire medical team. Denise held her daughter's hand before she was taken to the operating room. I love you, my girl, no matter what. I love you too, Mum, and don't worry, everything will be fine. Richard stepped forward to say goodbye. Zoe, when you wake up, I'll be here. Promise? I promise. The 4-hour surgery felt endless to Richard and Denise. They alternated between the waiting room and the hospital cafeteria, trying to stay calm. Finally, Dr. Robert appeared, still in his surgical scrubs. "How did it go?" Denise asked immediately. "Technically, the surgery was a success. We made all the planned corrections. Now it's a matter of waiting for recovery to see if there's any restoration of vision." "How long before we know the results?" Richard asked. "The first signs may appear in a week. The final outcome we'll only know in a month." "Can I see her?" "She's still recovering from anesthesia, but in an hour you can visit her." When Zoe woke up, her eyes were covered with special bandages. She heard Richard and Denise's voices before she was fully conscious. "I'm here, my girl," Denise said, holding her hand. "Mom, is the surgery over?" "It's over. Dr. Robert said everything went well." "Is Richard here?" "I'm here, Zoe," he said, moving closer to the bed. "How are you feeling?" "Strange. My head's a little fuzzy from the anesthesia, but I'm okay." "The bandages stay on for a week," Denise explained. "Then the doctor will check if there's any improvement." Zoe nodded slowly. "And if there isn't, that's okay. At least we tried." Once again, Richard admired the girl's calmness under pressure. The next few days were filled with intensive care and high hopes. Zoe remained in the hospital for observation, receiving daily visits from Richard and Denise. On the third day, she made an observation that caught everyone's attention. "I think I'm feeling something different." "What do you mean?" Denise asked. "It's hard to explain. It's like there's brightness. I know it's impossible with the bandages, but..." Dr. Robert was called immediately. He examined Zoe carefully, checking for any issues with the bandages. "The bandages are intact," he confirmed. "Zoe, what exactly are you feeling?" "It's like there's light reaching me. I can't see anything clearly, but I can tell the difference between when it's lighter and darker in the room." The doctor smiled. "That's a very positive sign. It could mean the surgery is working." Richard and Denise exchanged glances, a mix of hope and nervousness written on their faces. On the day the bandages were removed, the tension in the room was palpable. Dr. Robert had gathered a small medical team to witness the moment. "Zoe," the doctor said, "I'm going to remove the bandages now. It's important you don't strain your eyes. Let everything happen naturally." "I'm ready," she replied, her voice steady despite her anxiety. Dr. Robert began carefully unwrapping the bandages. Richard held one of Zoe's hands, and Denise held the other. When the final layer came off, Zoe blinked several times as if adjusting to a new reality. "Zoe," Dr. Robert asked gently, "what do you see?" Zoe stayed silent for several seconds, her eyes slowly moving around the room. "Light," she whispered finally. "I see light." "Can you make out any shapes?" Zoe focused, looking toward the doctor's voice. "I see shadows, outlines." "That's excellent," Dr. Robert said, clearly excited. "Can you tell where I am in the room?" Zoe turned her face toward him. "You're over there?" She pointed roughly in the right direction. "Perfect. Zoe, the surgery was a success. Your vision has been partially restored." Denise began to cry, covering her face with her hands. Richard stayed silent, too overwhelmed to speak. "Mom!" Zoe called, searching for her with her eyes. "Where are you?" "I'm right here, sweetheart," Denise said, stepping closer. Zoe looked toward her mother, her eyes trying to focus on her face. "I can see your outline, and you're crying, aren't you?" "I am," Denise admitted, laughing through her tears. "And Richard? Where's Richard?" "I'm here," he said, moving to the other side of the bed. Zoe turned to him, and their eyes met for the first time. "Richard," she said, her voice full of wonder, "I can see you. Not clearly, but I can tell you're there." Richard couldn't speak, he just nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Dr. Robert," Zoe asked, "will this get better?" "With time and visual rehabilitation exercises, yes. You could recover up to 70% of normal vision." 70%, Zoe repeated, as if testing the sound of the words. "That's more than I ever dreamed." In the weeks that followed, Zoe's recovery was closely monitored by a team of specialists. She did daily exercises to strengthen her eye muscles and train her brain to process visual information. Each day, her sight improved a little more. First, she could distinguish basic colors. Then, more defined shapes. Gradually, she began recognizing faces and objects. "What's it like to see colors for the first time?" Richard asked during one of his visits. "It's magical," Zoe answered, looking out the hospital window. "The blue of the sky is exactly how I imagined, soft and endless. And the other colors? Red is more intense than I thought. Green is calmer. But do you know the most beautiful color I've seen?" "Which one?" "My mother's eyes when she smiles." Zoe's restored vision brought unexpected changes to her life. She had to relearn many things she'd always done, relying on other senses. "Chess feels different now," she remarked during her first game after surgery. "Different how?" Richard asked. "Before I saw the board in my mind. Now I see it with my eyes too. It's like there are two images overlapping." "Is that affecting your game?" "At first, yes. But I'm learning to use both kinds of vision together." To everyone's surprise, the combination of Zoe's mental vision with her newfound physical sight made her game even stronger. She could now pick up on nuances in her opponent's expressions that she had never noticed before. 3 months after the surgery, Dr. Robert conducted the final evaluation of Zoe's recovery. "Zoe," he announced with a smile, "you've regained 80% of normal vision. It's an exceptional result, better than even our most optimistic expectations." 80%, she repeated, amazed. "Does that mean I can see almost everything?" "Almost everything. You might have some trouble with very small details or in low light, but for everyday activities, your vision is practically functional." Richard and Denise celebrated the news, but Zoe's reaction was more subdued. "Why don't you seem more excited?" Denise asked. "I am excited," Zoe said, "but I'm also processing how much my life has changed. It's a lot of new information to take in." Richard understood perfectly. Zoe was going through a complete transformation of identity, something that would take time to fully adjust to. With her vision restored, new opportunities opened up for Zoe. Invitations to international tournaments arrived regularly, and several chess academies offered her full scholarships. But once again, Zoe surprised everyone with her response. "I want to stay here. I want to keep studying at the local school, playing chess in Richard's library, being a normal teenager." "Zoe," Richard said, "are you sure? These are once-in-a-lifetime opportunities." "I'm sure. I've already proven what I wanted to prove to myself. Now I just want to be happy." "And you think staying here will make you happy?" Zoe looked around the library, her eyes tracing every detail she could now see clearly. "Richard, this library has always been my world. Now that I can see it, I realize it's even more beautiful than I imagined. Why would I want to trade that?" Richard smiled, admiring the young girl's wisdom. "How long has it been since you played in a tournament?" he asked. "About 6 months. Why?" "How about we enter a small tournament here in New York? Nothing too big, just to see how your game feels with your new vision." Zoe considered the idea. "That could be interesting, but only if it's something low-key without all that media pressure." Richard managed to sign her up for a regional tournament with local competitors. It was much more modest than the national events, but it would be a good chance for Zoe to test her skills. On the day of the tournament, Zoe was visibly nervous. It was her first competition where she could actually see her opponents, the surroundings, and people's reactions. "How do you feel?" Denise asked. "Different. Before I could focus only on the game. Now I see everything around me. It's distracting." Her first opponent was a middle-aged man who didn't know Zoe's story. When he saw he'd be playing against a teenager, he assumed it would be an easy win. The match began, and it quickly became clear that the man had completely underestimated his opponent. Zoe played with her usual precision, but now with the added advantage of being able to observe her opponent's reactions. "How does she do that?" the man muttered when he realized he was losing. Zoe won the match easily, but she didn't feel her usual satisfaction. "Richard," she said after the game, "I don't know if this still excites me the way it used to." "Why not?" "Before, winning was about pushing limits, proving I could do something that seemed impossible. Now, it feels too easy." Richard understood her dilemma. Zoe had lost the element of challenge that made competitive chess thrilling for her. "Zoe, what if we tried something different?" "Like what?" What if you started teaching chess to children with visual impairments? The suggestion made Zoe's eyes light up. Teaching. You have a unique perspective. You can teach techniques to both those who can see and those who can't. The idea of teaching chess sparked a new enthusiasm in Zoe. She began imagining how she could pass on the lessons she had learned to other children. Where could I teach? We could start a school right here, suggested Richard. Turn part of the library into a classroom. Richard, would you really do that? Zoe, after everything you've taught me about finding purpose in life, it would be an honor to help you find your new purpose. The idea of creating a chess school for visually impaired children quickly took shape. Richard funded the necessary adaptations to the library, creating a dedicated space for teaching. Denise was promoted from cleaner to the school's administrative coordinator, a recognition of her dedication and intelligence that had been underestimated for years. Denise, Richard said when offering her the new position, you've always been so much more than a cleaner. It's time your skills were properly recognized. Richard, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for us. Denise, you've changed my life far more than I've changed yours. This school isn't a favor I'm doing. It's a dream we're building together. The opening of the Zoe Williams Chess Academy took place 6 months later. The event drew families with visually impaired children from all over New York. Zoe, now 15, gave the opening speech. "Welcome to our school," she said, looking at the children and families present. "Here you'll learn that chess isn't about seeing the pieces. It's about seeing the possibilities." The first class had 12 students, ranging in age from 7 to 16. Zoe developed unique teaching methods, combining techniques for the visually impaired with conventional strategies. "Zoe," one parent remarked after the first week, "my son was never interested in any activity before. Now he talks about chess all the time." "Chess has that power," she replied. "It teaches us that we're all capable of extraordinary things, no matter our limitations." The school flourished quickly. Within a year, it had a waiting list and was receiving national recognition as an innovative model for inclusive education. Richard watched it all with immense pride. Zoe had found her true purpose, far beyond just being an exceptional player. "Zoe," he said during one of her classes, "do you realize what you've accomplished?" "What?" "You've turned your personal experience into an opportunity for hundreds of other children." "It's strange to think of it that way," she replied. "I'm just doing what I feel I should." "That's exactly what makes you special. You don't do things to impress anyone. You do them because they come from the heart." 2 years after the school opened, Zoe received an unexpected invitation. The World Chess Federation wanted to honor her as Ambassador for Inclusive Chess. "It's a tremendous honor," said the Federation's representative. "Zoe has become a global symbol of perseverance and inclusion." Zoe considered the invitation carefully. "Can I accept as long as I don't have to travel constantly or leave the school?" "Of course. The honor is precisely for the work you do here." The award ceremony was held at the school itself. Chess officials, government representatives, and hundreds of community members attended. When Zoe received the award, she gave a speech that moved everyone present. "This award isn't mine. It belongs to every child who proves daily that physical limitations don't limit dreams. It belongs to my mother, who worked tirelessly to give me opportunities. It belongs to Richard, who taught me that genuine kindness can transform lives." Richard was in the front row, tears streaming down his face. "But most of all," Zoe continued, "this award belongs to my grandfather, who taught me that chess is like life. Sometimes we need to sacrifice important pieces to win. I sacrificed the fame and money I could have earned by competing professionally, but I gained something far more valuable, the certainty that I'm making a difference in other people's lives." The applause was deafening. Zoe had become much more than an exceptional player. She was a leader, an educator, an inspiration. After the ceremony, Richard approached her. "Zoe, do you realize you've become exactly what your grandfather wanted you to be?" "How so?" "A person who uses her gifts to do good. Someone who understands that true victory isn't about defeating opponents but lifting others up." Zoe smiled, her eyes shining with a wisdom far beyond her 17 years. Richard, can I tell you a secret? Of course. Sometimes, when I'm teaching the kids here at the academy, I feel like my grandfather is present, as if he's proud to see his lessons still alive. I'm sure he is proud, Richard said, just as I'm proud of the extraordinary woman you've become. And I'm proud of the man you've become too. How so? When we first met, you were a successful businessman, but empty inside. Now you're someone who's found his true purpose, helping others find theirs. Richard reflected on Zoe's words. It was true. His life had taken on a whole new meaning since meeting her and Denise. You know what I've learned from both of you, he said. What? That real wealth isn't in a bank account. It's in the lives we touch, the differences we make, the love we share. Denise, who had stepped closer to listen, smiled. Richard, you should write that in a book. Why don't we write it together? Zoe suggested. The story of how three completely different people became a family and changed each other's lives. The idea of writing a book together excited all three of them. Over the next few months, they recorded their journey, from their first meeting in the library to the founding of the academy. The book, titled Seeing the Impossible, a story of chess, family, and overcoming, became a national bestseller. Richard donated all the profits to expand Zoe's academy. Zoe, he said when the book hit #1 on the bestseller lists, do you realize our story is inspiring thousands of people? It's incredible to think about, she replied. When I first started playing chess in your library, I never imagined it would lead to this. What surprises you the most about this whole journey? Zoe thought for a moment. What surprises me most is discovering that life mimics chess in a way my grandfather never fully explained. How so? In chess, sometimes the move that seems the riskiest is the one that leads to victory. Our family came together when each of us made the riskiest move possible, trusting strangers. Richard smiled, admiring the depth of her insight. And what was your riskiest move? Accepting that you wanted to help me without expecting anything in return. For a poor, blind girl, trusting the kindness of a millionaire seemed impossible. And yours, Mom? Zoe asked, turning to Denise. My riskiest move was letting you dream big. For a mother who always struggled just to survive, letting her daughter chase seemingly impossible dreams was terrifying. And you, Richard? Denise asked. Richard thought for a long moment. My riskiest move was letting you both into my life. After losing Emily, I had decided never to let myself get emotionally attached to anyone again. Letting you all break down those barriers was the scariest and most important thing I've ever done. The three of them sat in silence, absorbing the depth of her confession. You know what this proves? Zoe finally said. What? Richard and Denise asked together. That my grandfather was right from the start. Chess really is just like life. The greatest victories come when we have the courage to make the moves that scare us the most. End of story. And what about you, dear listener? What did you think of this story of overcoming? Did Zoe make the right choices in picking family and purpose over fame? Tell us in the comments which part moved you the most, and if you know someone who's faced similar challenges. Your opinion means so much to us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other touching stories like this one.